I yield the customary 30 minutes to the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. McGovern, pending which I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Without objection, the previous question is ordered.
During consideration of this resolution, all time yielded is for the purpose of debate only. Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, last night the Rules Committee met and reported a rule, House Resolution 75, providing for the consideration of 4 measures, H.J. Res. 7, H.R. 139, H.R. 382, and H.R. 497. The rule provides for consideration of all 4 measures under closed rules with 1 hour of debate each, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the committees of jurisdiction or their designees. The rule provides 1 motion to recommit for each measure. Madam Speaker, I rise today in support of this rule and in support of the underlying bills. Today, the Republican majority begins the long process of reversing the policy failures of President Biden and the previous Democrat majority. Madam Speaker, Republicans last week demonstrated that Republicans are committed to governing for the American people. Towards that end, Madam Speaker, House Republicans have had one of the most productive legislative weeks in recent memory. Our new governing majority has demonstrated that it is no longer the closed shop which was business as usual in a Democratic House in the last Congress. Instead of a lethargic Congress, Republicans in only 3 short weeks have set a precedent that I hope subsequently members will emulate. The new Republican majority is eager to begin the important work that America's sent us here to do. So instead of legislating for the few at the expense of the many, Republicans are making good on our commitment to America. We are dismantling the COVID surveillance state. We are protecting the conscience rights of our healthcare workers. We are demanding that government employees show up to do their job like the rest of America has done, and we are terminating and rescinding the interminable extensions of President Biden's public health emergency declaration. You know, sometimes, Madam Speaker, I almost feel like I've been trapped in a Dickens novel, in A Tale of Two Cities. Seems the Biden administration is clearly of 2 minds on the COVID pandemic, one view being the best of times. The administration's policies to combat the pandemic have been a resounding success. But then on the other hand, we are still living through a crisis that requires emergency measures that have to be prolonged indefinitely. But the American people spoke in the last election, Madam Speaker. Their message was clear enough. Their message by electing Republicans was enough is enough. So now, thanks to Chairman Graves and H.J. Res. 7, the American people can be assured that President Biden's national emergency will be rescinded and Americans will finally have a government that recognizes the reality across our nation, the very words spoken by President Biden on 60 Minutes last September: the pandemic is over. Madam Speaker, nowhere is the contrast more evident between Republicans and Democrats than what is included in this rule today. The Republican majority is already hard at work passing common sense legislation that will benefit our people, that will benefit all Americans, not just a connected few. Madam Speaker, just like you, one of the most vital services I provide to the constituents of the people of the 26th District of Texas is communicating with federal agencies on their behalf. Through this communication, I'm able to ensure timely services like passport services, Social Security benefits, Medicare enrollment, veterans benefits, and many more. But over the past few years, I've seen that these services have been severely delayed or even halted, completely in some cases, because what do you get? No one answers the phone or you get an out-of-office response from a federal agency, I submit that is entirely unacceptable. In fact, last week I introduced a bill called the REACT Act in a bipartisan fashion to require a timely response from the executive agencies after inquiries from members of Congress. However, in order for the agencies to fulfill their responsibilities, they first have to get back to work. H.R. 139, the SHOW Up Act, would end the unproductive telework policies to ensure that these federal agencies are back at work for the American people. I strongly support this bill, and I urge other members to support the underlying bill as well as the rule. Madam Speaker, again, this September, President Biden, in a candid, unguarded moment, officially admitted that the pandemic is over. And then for emphasis, he repeated it. But despite this declaration, this administration just reauthorized the 12th extension of the COVID-19 public health emergency. I think all of us who were here at the time agree that in March of 2020, the country was very much in a public health emergency. However, now the landscape has changed, and now the American people are transitioning back to their normal routines. Today, the Biden administration's lack of transparency has yet again put our country in a very difficult position. Throughout the last 3 years and 12 extensions of this public health emergency, people have had ample time to seriously discuss a plan to avoid disruptions to patients and providers as we transition out of this pandemic. This new House majority has been pressing the administration to come up with a plan to make permanent the policies that work and unwind those policies that don't. While there were several successful policies and innovations that came out of the emergency declaration, such as telehealth and hospital-at-home flexibilities, this administration has repeatedly failed to provide a plan. The public health emergency cannot serve as a permanent means for the Biden administration to subvert Congress to enact their radical agenda. Madam Speaker, I support Congressman Guthrie's efforts to officially end this public health emergency and look forward to transitioning back to regular order. Madam Speaker, our healthcare workers across America are still subject to President Biden's vaccine mandate enforced by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. The healthcare industry is already suffering from a severe workforce shortage that will have drastic effects on our ability to take care of patients. Republicans have been crystal clear on the issue, Madam Speaker. We never have and never will support federal vaccine mandates. The personal health decision of whether to receive a vaccine should be left between a patient and their doctor. The federal government has no place in demanding what an American must do for their personal health, and certainly as a condition of employment. For Texas specifically, one of our hospitals lost over 150 workers due to the federal vaccine mandate. This decision has deepened the staffing shortages back home, especially in rural areas, leaving all of us ill-equipped to deal with day-to-day functions. Madam Speaker, I will just conclude by saying I stand in strong support of this rule and the underlying bills that they will allow to be debated, and I urge my fellow members to support the rule, and I will reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Texas reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.